When you're working on reinventing your life, sometimes things can look great on the outside, and they can feel like they're going pretty great too. But here's the thing, all that's happening on the outside can go into a tailspin like that. Find out how my guest on today's episode of Real RAD Women dealt with her tailspin. The minute LaWanda Harris opens her mouth, you know immediately that she is a brilliant, confident, vibrant woman who cares. And LaWanda Harris has a message for you because she has learned some incredibly important lessons over the course of her 3 marriages and divorces. And she begins to reveal some of the lessons that she's learned that have helped her put herself on the course to have a life on her own terms. More importantly, a life that she has created fully knowing who she is and embracing that as she carries on in her rad new life. So please enjoy and help me welcome LaWanda Harris to Real Rad Women.
It's a pleasure to have you as a guest today on Real Rad Women. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Melissa, thank you so much for the opportunity to join you on Real RAD Women. And I am looking forward to this discussion. Have been for some time now, and I'm definitely looking forward to the discussion.
Well, I love it. You totally captured my heart when we met at an event recently and you reached out to me because you saw that immediate connection between, I think, both how we operate and the kind of people we are and also what we're doing in the world. So
Agreed.
I love it. I love it. And I would love for you to, start off by just telling us a little bit about what was it, LaWanda, that attracted you to me and my missions of helping women reinvent their lives after divorce? What's your connection to that?
Absolutely. The thing that really impressed me the most, Melissa, when I met you was just the level of vibrancy that you brought to an organization that needs people like you and I to be able to help them heal from the traumatic experiences of their divorce. Listen, it is, something that over 50% of the world experiences. And while none of us actually want to be in that category, many of us do find ourselves there. One of the things that you don't always find is individuals who are able to speak about it from a holistic perspective that is really willing to share how they got over, because the process of getting to here is not pretty.
No,
A lot of
it's
times
not.
people suffer in silence. They suffer because they don't think that anybody else understands. So when I met you at a parallel event and we began to talk, it just inspired me to know that there is someone else in the different part of the country that is actually focusing on bringing health and healing and well-being and tools to help other women to be able to recover from the traumatic experiences of divorce. And so that's what caused me to gravitate towards you. It's one of my callings. And when you meet people that have a calling on their lives to help others, it just makes things so much easier.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And I couldn't agree more. I feel fortunate now that I came through what I did in my experience to be able to see this because it is something that people do need, that so many of us need. And that, opening the curtains and having the light shine in and to know that you don't need to suffer in silence. You're not alone. And that there is a path to a better experience for you is so important to me because I see so much of that obvious suffering. And then I also know, even from my personal experience, what you shared with me about yourself, the silent suffering is even greater because we can't see it. It looks amazing on the outside and people are so broken
Mhm.
inside. So to be able to have the tools to move on and to be holistically better, it feels so good to be at that place. So just to have people have the opportunity to be there is yeah, it's something that is, I think, really important, especially
Yeah.
these days.
I,
People
I,
need,
I I mean, let's just think about it. I mean, people see our story, people see our glory, but they don't necessarily see our stories
yeah,
and what we had to go through in order to
yeah,
get to this place.
yeah,
And so, being in this place makes us extremely vulnerable because we're telling some of our innermost, deepest, darkest secrets, thoughts, worries, concerns, fears, the things that we had to face ourselves as women to get to another side of us to be able to help someone else.
yeah,
But the truth of the matter is that when you go through things in your life, it's not just for you, but it's so that you can help somebody else along the way. And that
yeah,
gives us our internal purpose and our greater good. And that helps us to be able to put back out into the universe what we have received from the universe to get to this level in our lives. So it's just, listen, it's just an absolute honor to talk with your audience, share my perspective, because who knows? We don't know how many people are in the same boat that I'm in that also could use, my benefit as well. Of course, we're talking about divorces. Like,
yeah.
listen, but I am a little bit different in respect that I am a third time offender. I am literally,
Offender.
I am a third time.
Oh my gosh.
I have been, and it took me, if there's nothing else that I can really communicate in this moment with us, is how long it took me to admit that I am a
Mm,
three-time divorcee. And I'm not that old. I am, still I'm actually only 50 years old. And in that period of time, I have been married and divorced 3 times. That creates a stigma in and of itself that has to require major amount of both internal and external support to be able to manage that level of trauma. Because at some point, you really have to start looking at yourself like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with what I'm doing? What am I doing that puts me in this situation over and over and over again? And how can I prevent that from happening again?
so, LaWanda, what was it that brought you to that point of even asking the question, of getting to that breaking point for yourself?
I had to tell myself the truth, Melissa. At some point in time, we have to stop telling ourselves the fairy tale that we've been
Yeah.
telling ourselves since we were little girls playing dress up out of our mother's trunks and putting on her
Hmm.
jewels. At some point in time, we do have to grow up, put on our big girl undies, pull them up,
Yeah.
and say, you know what? I am a core cause of some of the dysfunction in my own life, and here are the reasons why. So I started that by telling myself the truth. LaWanda, why do you keep getting married over and over again to the wrong spouse? What is it in you that is desiring this consistently over and over again?
And was it, when were you seeing that you were attracting or seeking out the same spouse over and over?
I won't say that they were the same spouse, but I was the same woman. I
Mm,
said something right there.
yeah.
It
Why?
wasn't, because each of my spouses had distinctly different personalities, characters, and personas. So, I was testing the field, trying to see,
Oh,
well, what's gonna work here.
hey, at least you were experimenting and you weren't repeating that wheel.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, I was the same woman. And there was some brokenness in me that gravitated to the brokenness in them that allowed us to come together and, well, just be broken,
Hmm.
almost from the start. And so while I don't necessarily consider my first marriage as a failed marriage, I consider it as a circumstantial situation because we were very young. We were 18 years old. We graduated from high school in June and we got married in November. Like,
Oh,
we had no clue. When I look back at those pictures, Melissa, I didn't even have enough sense to hem the wedding gown. I'm coming down the aisle tripping over a wedding gown because nobody told
Oh,
me that I could take the wedding dress to the dry cleaner down the street and they would
I'm,
at least hem that up for me. Or
wow.
I didn't have enough worldly knowledge to know that I could have went to the local fabric store and got some stitch witchery and did it
Oh,
myself with the
right.
iron.
Oh my, yeah. You were just
A baby
baby doing,
playing in a
fulfilling
grown-up
a,
world.
a fairy tale, doing, yeah.
But in doing so, I recognize that that was kind of part of the first part of that systematic challenges that I was experiencing because I, had a childhood, but I was definitely ready to leave home. And
Hmm.
so that became my out to leave home. That became an opportunity. Well, that is nobody's responsibility. It's nobody's responsibility to help me experience my own level of peace, joy, strength, happiness. It's nobody else's
Yeah.
responsibility. They're not responsible for that. I
No,
am
you are.
responsible. And
Yep.
I did not give myself that opportunity to do that as a young woman because I went right from my mother's house to being my husband's wife. And
And
all of
that
the
was your
things,
source of,
yeah.
yeah, that's, oh, my joy, my happiness,
Mhm.
my fulfillment is right here in front of me in this other
Right.
person. Yeah.
And on top of that, what I conceived in my mind that looked and felt like. When you're
Sure.
a kid, and I don't know how many of us actually have the stories, but I don't know how many of us have actually seen modeled, well put together, oiled marriages that work without the drama and the foolery. And so many of us, go ahead.
I was just going to say, any story and any example, I can actually tell you that I did. What you
Mhm.
just said was how I was raised. But guess what? I didn't see the real bits,
Mhm.
the arguments, the ugliness, the things that happen in real life that didn't happen in my experience growing up with my family.
Wow.
So there was this man who worshiped his wife and the wife who was just sort of like, oh darling, go on. Like, it was, we joke in my family, but it also, this that created a bit of a fairy tale that doesn't really exist in the world as well. So I was actually living that to a degree. And it doesn't, it creates, well, we all walk into, and what you're talking about, the set of expectations that you had for yourself and for what that experience was, just based on everything that you had come through and come from, that
Absolutely.
is this false story.
and and
It's a
and
fairy
that's
tale.
and that's what I'm saying. Like, we have to get past our own fairy tale of, number one, what marriage looks like, what it really is, because we enter into these covenant relationships and these covenant partnerships that are supposed to be lifelong, life lasting experiences, but we're coming into them with such a false ideology of
Yeah.
what it really takes to create that type of peace in the relationship. And unfortunately, so many of us are coming in with our own level of expectations.
Yeah.
I say this, that marriage is not the coming together of two lives, but it's the collision of two histories.
Oh,
And
beautiful
so,
said.
as a
Wow.
young woman,
Yeah.
he was coming into a crazy set. Now today we are friends. Like, we are not, we are just, it's crazy, because we always were. And he
Sure.
is the father of my children. The only father. I have two children by the same man. That was one of the things that I was going to make sure that happened. I was going to be married, have two children by the same man. That was it. And the factory's closed. And I stuck with that, because I didn't want to have a lot of children. I didn't want to have blended family. That was my choice. I was raised in a blended family. I didn't want that for my own family, paradigm. But what we didn't expect was for the other challenges that came up in that marriage, that as a young woman, I was not in a position to be able to minister to be able to motivate, to be able to gravitate away from. And so, unfortunately, that is the cycle that started this thing in my life. And from that moment, I truly believe I have been trying to find that happiness that I created for myself, thinking that that's where my happiness was going to come, in the confines of marriage. So I kept marriage. So I kept doing it over and over again, looking for that silver lining that clearly had to start in me.
Oh, beautiful. That's so the silver lining that had to start in you.
Yeah. So if there's one thing that I can say to our listening audience today that's going to help you to be able to really, if the very first point that's going to help you to be able to get is literally figure out what you want.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
And
otherwise you're going to
that
keep
can be
repeating.
scary. Yeah. Yeah.
Because
and
now you got to have a face-to-face conversation with you. And we don't oftentimes like to do that.
No.
Because we want to defer that off for someone else to come and tell us that we're great, we're wonderful, we're magnificent, we're beautiful, we're pretty. Oh my God, you're talented. You have all of these skills and all of this worth, and we're getting that externally. And that's wonderful. We all love accolades. But at the end of the day, can you say the same things in your own mirror? So that's point number one that's going to help a whole lot of people. You've got to get what I call butt booty naked honest.
Yeah. Well, and the way to start is to stop, stop for a minute. I mean, and that's, going, and just trying to, oh, it'll be fine. I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to hustle. I'm going to work through this. It's just to keep throwing things that aren't putting in the
against
thought,
the wall,
putting in the
sticks.
work. Exactly. What's going to stick? And well, you know what? If I'm working, then I'm moving forward. Like that whole idea that if you're doing something, then you're progressing, when really you're not. If you're not really taking that step and figuring out what you want, who you are. I mean, at 18 years old, I still remember at 18 years old, my parents got married very young, and like I said, they had this. They have a very aligned, very similar values. They've been married for 60 years, like long time. So again, this like beautiful model that is not necessarily something that, because we didn't see all of the real work, we just kind of saw the pretty things, not understanding that. But I remember at 18 thinking, this is how old my mother was when she got married.
Wow.
At 18, that was like, I had no idea. The whole idea that I always think about that I think is so funny is when you are at a phase in your life where you are still borrowing other people's clothes because you don't know, you see something else that you want to be and to represent, and you don't have that belief in yourself and that confidence in who you are, that you can just show up and be amazing. You've got to look like something that you want other people to think you are. And the clothes borrowing story is something that is pervasive in my life, and stories of both myself and people who I have attracted into my experience, that I think is a really telling sign of you haven't stopped to really look at who you are and what you want and what that means. Because that is where every choice that you make is derived from.
That's right.
Fulfilling those things. And you are where you are because of every choice you make.
That's right.
And if you are not making the choices in alignment with the inside of who you are, then the outside is just a shell of nothing.
That's right. And at the end of the day, what we have is we have a whole lot of people who don't know who they are, marrying people
in the world,
who don't know who they are, thinking a false ideology that two halves make a whole.
Yeah.
But in a marriage, two people need to be whole before they can actually dominate and enjoy the experience of what marriage is all about. I'll share this story with you because I think it's really prominent. I love going to weddings, and I love the part of the wedding where, they have that unity candle thing. And I saw it done one way that was very different. And I have stuck with that since that moment. But when the mother of the groom came down and lit their side of the candle and took their seat, and the mother of the bride came down the aisle and lit that side of the candle and took their seat, and those two candles continued to burn throughout the ceremony. At some point in time, the preacher or the officiant told the bride and the groom to now go and take those individual candles and lift them out of their holder. And together, they are to bring them together to light that internal flame, and then they take them apart. Now, it is customary for each individual to blow out their own flames and put them down. But no, we got to stop doing that, because just because you got married, you are still an individual. And your individuality is still important in that marriage, because that's what brought the two of you together in the first place. So when one person blows out their flame, they are taking the illumination off of themselves and trying to deflect it onto that individual. So that person is no longer happy, because they somehow believe that in order for this to work, I now have to
give
do what that person wants. I got to give myself up. And that is not ideal. No. You can keep up that lie for a little while. You can live with that journey and the decision that you made to blow out your own light for oh so long. But eventually your innate desires and who you are as an individual is going to surface again. And you're going to have to answer that question of, why did I give up everything I was to become everything they needed me to be? And now look, I have nothing left of who I am. And that identity crisis.
I know why you do it. I know why it happens.
Why do we do it?
Because we're taught that's what we're supposed to do. Otherwise, it's super selfish. Otherwise, you're being selfish. How can you be so selfish? That is, I think, in the beautiful women that I work with, that is what, even in myself, that is one of the hardest things to overcome, because it is something that I know for me has, being selfless, being, one who gives to others, that is beautiful in the sense of sharing, and what we were talking about before, about why we're so grateful that we're here to share, to create that beautiful ripple effect for people.
Right.
The part of the story that we don't get told as children, and that they don't tell you, except for this amazing Unity candle example, in order to give, you have to remain true to who you are, and you have to make sure that you are at the center of it.
That's right.
You have to be. And it's not a bad thing. It's not something to be ashamed of. If you're not comfortable saying out loud right away, just kind of tell yourself that. Eventually you'll get there. But it's so true, because it's even, there's a voice right now in the back of my head saying, oh, you were not, isn't that selfish behavior? No.
Yeah.
That is
it's not about being selfish, because you can be selfless and still self-persevere.
Correct.
That's a skill.
Correct. Yeah.
I can still, because, at some point in time, I have to replenish my cauldron. I cannot pour from an empty vessel.
No.
If the vessel is empty, it's empty. And so we're finding so many challenges in our marriages because we're trying to pour out from an empty vessel.
Yes.
We have nothing left to give. And it causes so many of us to lose the core of who we are. And so we have to get to this place where we discover her again. Got to get to that place where we discover him again.
Yeah.
We've got to get to that place, because if we don't, then we will continue to make the same mistakes over and over. Yeah.
Absolutely. So how did you get there? You asked some questions, you looked in the mirror, and then what happened?
I had to have a real, and I call these come to Jesus conversations. I don't know where you stand on your biblical or religious principles, but mine is what they are, and it is what it is. But I had to have a real come to Jesus talk. LaWanda, why do you keep getting married over and over again? And because I am raised as a religious being, I enjoy church. I love God. I want to please God in all of my ways. And though I fall short of his glory, yes, indeed. But at the end of the day, I want to always my life to resemble to mirror. I want when people see me that they're able to see that there is a higher power that leads and guides LaWanda, that she is just not out here, willy-nilly in and of her own accord. I think we've had enough, examples of that, in our everyday lives, of people who just do whatever they want to do, say whatever they want to say, have no consequences. But I always wanted to show that there was something that was leading and guiding LaWanda. So my spiritual principles are what leads and guides that. And so I had to have a real come to Jesus conversation one day in why I kept getting married over and over again to the wrong spouse, right? Good man, just wrong spouse for me. Mm-hmm. And that was, I wanted to live in my truth, that I did not want to have sexual relationships outside of marriage, but I liked sex. So I kept getting married so that I could have a sexual relationship without feeling like I was displeasing the spiritual relationship that I had with God. Now, I know that is some old school girl. Folks ain't even on that tip no more.
Hey, you know what? We have our belief systems, and those are the things that drive us to make decisions and choices. And that is legitimate. That is totally legitimate. Yeah.
And it wasn't until I came to terms with that, and that I began to harness that particular need in my life, that I began to understand. Because now, obviously, after 3 failed marriages, I'm single and I'm satisfied. I'm not, that's not an itch that can't be scratched anymore. It is, right. It has been reconciled in me. And particularly because my 3rd divorce was so heartbreaking and just such a gut-wrenching, unbelievable experience, because that was not supposed to happen. It just wasn't supposed to happen. But I remember when I was after my 1st divorce, and I remember getting married for the 2nd time, I went to the other end of the spectrum. So I married young, 18, and we had our children, and I'm pretty sure we were divorced or separated by the time I know for a fact we were separated before my 2nd child was born, because I was living at my mother's home when I gave birth to my daughter. And so, the marriage didn't really last a long time. And there were some mitigating circumstances that led up to that, which, we will not necessarily, that's not my story to tell.
Not today.
But at the same token, that ain't my story.
Yeah, there you go.
But at the same token, I thought about that. But when I got married for the 2nd time, I was so involved, entrenched in my spiritual journey, that with that relationship, like, we would not even be intimate until the wedding. We just, that was just, we, and he was, in my church, my bishop married us. And I remember, this is the craziest story. I remember walking down the aisle with my best friend who was giving me away at that time. My father was deceased. And I remember my best friend walking me down the aisle, and I'm literally having an audible conversation coming down the aisle, because I can hear in my ears train crossing signals. Ding, 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 ding. They were so loud that I'm having an audible conversation with my escort, who is 6'5", I'm 5'2", so he's looking down like, who are you talking to? I'm like, don't worry about it, everything's good. It's good.
just chatting up your kneecaps. I'm
just chatting them up here. But I hear these railroad crossing signs. And I said, God, I hear that. I don't know what it means, but whatever it is, he's a believer, I'm a believer, we will work that out. You know how many times we get those warning signals, like, this is not the way to go. Mm-hmm. Don't go, don't proceed.
I think I hear something, but I'm keep going. Ignore. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
I pushed that thing all the way aside, because listen, I got 250 people in the church.
You're en route. The plane, listen, you're on the runway.
We are coming down the runway. This plane has left the tarmac. We cannot stop this. And there were multiple times during that ceremony that I knew I literally saw myself stand up from prayer, turn around, face the audience, and tell them, I'm sorry, I can't go through with this. It's like an out of body experience. I cannot go through with this, but there's chicken wings down in the fellowship hall. Y'all go ahead and get y'all some chicken. You know,
on me.
It's on me today, but
Yeah.
I didn't have the courage to do that. And so that marriage had no choice but to end because of the way that it started. It started knowing that it wasn't supposed to happen in the first place. And I will never forget with it on the honeymoon, like it started on the honeymoon. We are in the Bahamas somewhere on our honeymoon, and it's time to go back to the States. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe this is over, and I got to go back to work on Monday. And I asked him, when do you go back to work? He says, oh, I don't. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, well, I quit. You quit? Well, yeah, they wouldn't give me time off for the honeymoon. Well, you crazy? That thing started right.
And he didn't even tell you that. Oh.
Didn't even tell me. And so that set us up for a 2-year transition through some of the craziest experience. That's a whole different show about just crazy experiences.
You learned
and
a
that
lot.
marriage ended up moving into divorce. But it's interesting because I, got past that. And I will be honest with you, Melissa, neither my first marriage or my second marriage broke my heart. They were just, okay, like, sign here. And we moved on. Like, I actually remember leaving the courthouse from that second one, jumping up and down in the elevator with my girlfriend, because it was like a celebration. That would have probably been one of those ones that I would have thrown the divorce party for.
Long time coming, sort of like, and
it was no consequence. And the reason why they were of no consequence, either one of them, and in any of my marriages, truthfully, is because I was always the woman who made everything happen. Like I bought the wedding rings for both of those weddings. Like, what was wrong with me? So when I say be introspective and look at why you do the things that you do, until until you can admit that, I bought the rings. Like,
and so
you are
isn't
not
it
telling
crazy?
yourself the truth.
If you were watching your life in a movie, in a replay, would you be yelling at that woman?
Heck yeah.
Yeah, and again, it's like, if you stop and you really look at that and you realize I've been doing all this stuff, and it's like, it's crazy. It's crazy when you think about it in hindsight that you are allowing yourself to do it, but it's just no fault in it. It's what you do until you decide it's time to stop.
Enough.
Time to change.
It's time to stop. Yeah. It is. It is crazy. So you're right.
Why is this happening?
If I were to look at that movie and see that chick on the screen, I'd be like, Rod, you're crazy.
Yeah, right.
What's wrong with you?
At the screen. Yeah, totally.
She's stupid.
Yeah, right. Really? And it's like, oh, wait a minute. That's me. Hold on.
It's me. But I didn't struggle in either one of those relationships when it came to an end. I just didn't. Like, it was what it was. And so I moved forward, and I guess the healing process of those came relatively easy, because it was just like, there was no loss. In that
Well,
situation.
and you're a strong woman. Like, you exude, and of course you've come through a lot, but your confidence, your spirit, your independence, like those elements of you, even though they may have been showing up and coming out in different ways in your desire to be part of a marriage, you have that. So that really, you're a strong woman. And that, I think, has a lot to do with it, which can also be, I think, really challenging, because as a strong woman, the question of what's wrong with me and why can't I make this work? I can do anything, is even more difficult to come to terms with.
Absolutely. I am in agreement. I mean, you listen, being a strong woman is a catch-22, because, being a strong woman, I can make some ish happen. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. I can squeeze a tear out of George Washington's eye on a dollar bill. Yes, I can. I can make it work. Like, you know what? This all we got? Give me a cardboard box and I'm gonna put up some red curtains and this is where we live in. It's gonna be pretty. We're gonna plant some flowers outside around the cardboard box. We're gonna be fine because I can make some things happen.
Make it work.
And that's just part of the womanness in me, because that's why we have the womb. We are the womb man, the woman. We have the ability to give birth to so many things that look like nothing. We can make it into something and really create something beautiful with whatever is in our hands. But being that strong woman has its drawbacks, because a lot of times that can become intimidating. It can become challenging, for the men in our lives, especially when they believe that strongness or that strength is usurping their authority. And in addition to that, there are times in which that strength will prevent them from being the husband, the band that surrounds the house. Because baby, we cooking with hot grease. We getting it all done.
Right.
And all they
What do I need to do? She's got it.
Yeah, they just there.
Yeah.
Because we're like the puppet master pulling the strings and making everything happen. And then all of a sudden, that is one of the challenges that we have to face, because we got to learn how to pull back in some of those situations, not fall back,
right?
Pull back consciously, because unfortunately, as a woman, we just have that innate ability. Now, not all women. Now, then there's some of us now that didn't get less.
Totally, yeah. And it really is, and it becomes that identity, and so saying how the strong woman who can do anything, if she isn't doing something well, or if there's something she sees that she maybe doesn't think she can do, there's a huge internal conflict that happens then.
That's
like,
right.
Well, how can this happen? And the same thing can happen for the woman who doesn't think I can't do anything. I'm just over here. I'm just, the woman behind the man, the woman that, either way, again, these are just roles that we've stepped into.
Yep.
That then we create for ourselves that become a really challenging box to step out of when we see that this whole world that we've been building is something that isn't necessarily the place we're meant to be, supposed to be, not what it is.
and I don't want to be.
Right, and I don't want to be.
My choice is I don't want to be there. Like, I don't know why I am here, but I don't want to be here.
And that's the best. I think that little crack of lightning is the best gift you can get, because it stops you in your tracks. Even if you don't know, how did I get here? Why am I even feeling this way? Something's not right. That's the opening that you've got to take.
And it takes some of us a little bit longer than others.
Oh, yeah.
Some of us, you got it, if at first, what was the nursery rhyme? If at first you don't succeed, try again. Try.
Yeah,
again.
Try. Yeah.
So there wasn't just one try.
Yeah.
There were 2 tries.
And if you're really emphatic, you can make it even. Yeah, exactly. No, it's
this girl tried
true.
It again.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the funny thing about that. I believe that once you get to that place where you are now able to define who you are, you understand your why, you know why you do the things that you do. You also understand the makeup of what makes you you. You're unique. Mm-hmm. You've told yourself the truth. All of the things that we've talked about in these few moments together. When you get to that place, now all of a sudden, your focus kind of shifts into where you are trying to guide your purpose towards. You kind of shift and you go to that next level. And so for me, after that second divorce, I got my life together. Like, I was no longer, because there was a part of me at that time in my life that thought that I needed a man in order for me to be successful. Mm-hmm. But I don't need a man. I want a man. And that is the difference. You got to know the difference. Like, he is nice to have around. I got 2 dressers sitting out in my living room right now that I'm like, I cannot put these things together. I joked with a client yesterday. I said, I need a husband.
Are they from IKEA? I could do it. I love putting together furniture.
It came from Amazon. The holes are not aligned. I don't care what they say. These holes are not aligned. So it is, Y'all lied. The holes are not aligned. Now, I know I'm putting this right. I am looking at this picture anyway. So but I want a man. I love, and so there are, when you get to that place and you recognize that, it shifts how you begin to move in your life. So I was living in Ohio, divorced second time. I had made a decision that I wanted to relocate to South Florida, which is where I'm currently at, in beautiful sunny South Florida, which, by the way, is why I have on short sleeves and you don't.
I'm wearing long johns. I'm wearing long johns under my jeans
on
right
shorts.
Now. So it was snowing a minute ago, just saying, but this is it's beautiful here. I love it.
Yes, it is. It is. But listen, it has its own things.
Yeah.
I got about my business. I started to, really focus on what it was that I really wanted to do for LaWanda. Like, it was no longer about what I could do for husband number one or husband number two. It was about, now, what can I do for LaWanda? What makes sense for LaWanda? How do I feel, about that? And so I relocated. I got a new house. I started a new program. I was getting ready to go maritime. I moved to South Florida actually to go out on the cruise ships. At that point in time, I was a massage therapist. I was studying for a spa director's position. I moved here to go to a school that was hosting a spa director's opportunity. They owned the spas on all of the cruise ships in the world. And so that, I was about my business. Like, you know what? And boom,
doing
here comes number 3.
Well, sure. You were, first of all, this is good because you're in a good place. You're putting positive stuff out there, so you attract, of course. When you're out there and you're luminous, people are attracted to the light.
My God. And it was amazing. And what was really crazy about that experience was that he pursued me until I said yes. Like, people around us was like, when are you going to give that brother a chance? Look at this man. I was blind. Like, you know what, because honey, I'm going on down the road here. I got some cruise ships to get on. I'm getting ready to go over here. I'm going to make this money. I'm getting ready to do that. I was not even focused. And he was there. I tell the story often that he would come to my house. He would detail my car every Saturday, mow my lawn, cut my bushes, take out my trash, and go home. Like, I wouldn't even know he had been there. Oh, wow. I would just wake up and boom, those things were done. Like, this man pursued me like I have never been pursued before. And so that made it feel right. And it was right.
Yeah.
It was an amazing experience. But then LaWanda showed back up, putting things in perspective, making stuff happen. Doing what I do in order to build house and be able to build community and sense of worth and sense of satisfaction. She showed right back up. She stepped from behind the scenes of all of the amazing things that LaWanda was doing for the external, but that internal part of me still was lingering. She was still there. And the moment that individual took interest in me, I began to work and I began to set it up and I began to take it. Now, I didn't buy the ring on this one, but I definitely gave him an SKU number. He knew exactly what store to go to. He had the SKU number. All he had to do was walk in like, yeah,
but see, it's like, I'm making it easy for you.
In my mind.
Right.
In my mind. It was just, she showed right back up. Even though I was getting where I wanted to go, that unhealed part of me showed right back up. So sometimes we have to give ourselves enough time for the you want to be to overtake the you really are. Yeah. And I hadn't given it enough time.
Well, because it's not something that we're taught. It's not, and as obvious as it is in hindsight, it is not intuitive because we're looking at the external result, the outer result. It's a lot like weight loss. And it's so much easier to look at that very obvious sort of outcome. And it's so much easier to say, well, I would rather work on losing weight than I would rather work on fixing my myself with the things I
Mindset.
know that I'm doing to myself. Because again, there's this clear outcome. And it's obvious to you and it's obvious to everyone around you. And the challenge that happens so often when we're trying to change the way we eat, change the way our body looks, lose weight, we focus on the external things that we do to make that happen. I'm going to start exercising. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to do this stuff. Bam, go on keto 2 weeks later, you're down 20 pounds. Amazing. Guess what you didn't do? Fix your mindset.
Mhm.
So you're not sustaining it. And
That's so
it's
good.
it's a really challenging thing. I mean, that is the biggest. You're such an amazing example of that, LaWanda, and it's such an important lesson, especially because I know where this is going, and you have like the pieces of the playing pieces are on the board, and
Yeah.
you're playing the game. It looks like you're winning, except strategy is not.
Mm.
It's not all together, and it's the combination of that internal external. We need to see those external results. They
Love it.
motivate us.
Mhm.
They keep us going. But the internal work that we don't like to admit and that you can't really necessarily see, that's what drives the external.
Yeah,
And that's where the sustainability is in
that's
the
right.
change.
And
Yeah.
Jan Van Zant says it like this. She says, you got to do your work.
Mm-hmm.
And until you do your work, you will continue to go through the same cycles in life
Yeah.
because it starts with you.
You.
You cannot do this unless you do your work.
Yeah.
And do you see how far back I had to go? I had to go back to my childhood
We all do. That's yeah. I mean, which is
and be
that's
real
where we want
about
to
the
go.
things that hurt me, traumatized me,
Yeah.
forced me to have to. I had to really, because there are still disappointments and challenges that I experienced that I'm like, you have to do that. And until you're willing to
Yeah.
do that, it just continues to just come back.
Yeah.
And we have to learn how to
Yeah.
shut that cycle off. And unfortunately, when Mr. Look Good, Smell Good, Dress Nice, Drove Well came.
Do your lawn work and take care of your
Oh,
trash. Can I have his number? No, I'm just kidding.
right, right. Yeah. Yeah. I ought to blast him, like call him. No,
Oh
okay.
my no,
um,
no.
no, but what I didn't say or finish when I was talking about the second one, and I'll just go back and
Yeah.
hit it because it's important. First marriage, I got married at 18. We were the same age, but we were young. That second marriage, that man was 18 years older than me.
I thought, yeah, I thought so. That's right. I was going to ask. Thank
He
you for
was
bringing that
18
back because
years
that was,
older than me.
yeah,
So
okay.
that was just ridiculous. Now I'm in a relationship that's leading towards marriage, and we are parallel in everything we do. We're parallel in our age. We're parallel in our income status. We have the same grown adult children on their way to college within the next year to year and a half. Like everything just aligned, and it just looked like,
Good on paper.
yeah,
Yep.
it looked good. And so we got into that relationship. And I'll be very honest with you. My divorce snuck up on me. I didn't even know that I was getting ready to get divorced. When he said it, I didn't believe him for 3 months. But for the moment that he said it, he literally cut all communication with me. And it was the weirdest thing because he lived in my house and he didn't speak to me for 22 months. Like, you want to talk about torture. Like and it was like, and there was a part of me that was grieving the loss, trying to repair the damage. I mean, I can tell you there were times when I literally would crawl on the floor and beg, do not do this. It was such a failed experiment. Like, it was the most painful to this day. When people hear me tell that story, they're like, girl, I can't believe you. Yes, I did. Because, it was the most painful experience because it didn't make any sense. This man wooed me, pursued me. I still, obviously, we're on Facebook. We're no longer connected, but I still get the memories. I
Oh,
had one.
yeah. Yeah.
I had a Facebook memory of him the other day that just popped up from 9 years ago, and it was me in my car. I was taking a picture of him pumping gas outside the car through the rear view mirror. And I captioned it like what a real man does, because, you go to the grocery store now, honey, homeboy be sitting in the driver's seat, sis be outside pumping gas. And I'm like, man, what are you doing? Ma'am, ma'am, what are you doing? Like he in the car
Open
playing
the
his
door.
Switch.
Right. Exactly.
Like, ma'am.
Are you talking about my kids right now?
Listen, I ain't saying no names.
Right. Right. No, that's, yeah.
But
It's,
those are the things that
yeah.
come back on us. And I'm just like, wow. But that divorce snuck up on me. And it was a result of an external pressure on his side that had sown such a high degree of discord in our marriage that he had to make a decision. And so this was the meddling mother-in-law. And there are still men today who are so endeared and beholden, and the apron strings haven't been cut from mommy,
Yeah.
that they make decisions
As adults.
based on what mommy says. And that was the root cause of my divorce. And it was because it just shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Like, it just shouldn't have happened. And when you look back on it, and I look back on it, and it was not something that just came out of the blue. It was just something that we just ignored until she was no longer able to give those little hints.
Yeah. And it was like, boom.
And then she dropped the bomb. And when she dropped the bomb, he had to make an unfortunate decision. Either I am going to stay over here with this woman whom I love, pursue, cherish, have a whole life with, and lose the rest of my family, because she had literally alienated him. Like, we were not even allowed to go to his grandfather's funeral. Like, who does that? He could go, but he could only go if he didn't bring me. Well, he wasn't willing to do that. He was like, and she ain't even did nothing to you. Cook some greens. Like, she didn't do nothing to you, but
we could have a whole like Dr. Phil unpacking of this right now. I mean, totally.
It was really a nutty situation. And that is, so he had to make that decision, and he chose his brothers and his sisters and his aunts and uncles and grandparents that were still alive, and his mom and his dad and all of that. He had to make a decision to choose them over me. And listen, it took me a long time to come to grips with that, because I'm Bible now. Then shall a man leave his mother and his father and cleave to his wife. I'm Bible,
right?
I'm like,
I love you.
I'm like, if I turn around and look at my library on that top shelf right there, there is 17 versions of the Bible right there. Like, I'm Bible, so you can't just, this is ridiculous. And
how can this be?
How can it be? How can a woman that's in her word consistently, believe in God, ordained in ministry, train, can cast, you do all kinds of stuff in, miracles, and, and believe God, and, and really just, pray for sick, and, deaf ears is open. And, how can this woman that now has all of this ability spiritually be unable to heal this part of my own personal life? Yes, it wasn't. I don't have that answer, but at the same token, I had to come from behind it and say that was his choice. Yeah. And if God will not violate our choice to choose, you got a choice to choose this day whom you will serve. If God won't violate our will, then I don't have the ability to violate his either. Done deal.
Well said. Well said.
And so I'm divorced 3 times. But that divorce took me 6 years to heal from. The 2 years that we were together, the 2 years of the separation before the divorce, it took me about 4.5 years. Yeah, about right about that 5-year mark. But it literally, and it's still an ongoing process because he still pops up on my timeline. And there's a part of me that loved him so much. It's like, wow, how could you have destroyed what we had like this? But the 2.5 years of the separation, through the divorce process, 2 years after the divorce process, it took time. And so when people say that time heals all wounds, truthfully, it does. And though you may still have some, reminders of that, you will
Thank you,
be able
Facebook.
to,
Right.
you will be, thank you, Facebook. You will be able to, know that you are healed because those things will come up and it doesn't shake anything.
Yeah, that rattle, that trigger, sometimes every once in a while there is that thing that you feel a little bit more, you feel it less.
Yeah.
And that,
less and less.
Yeah.
Less and less. I had to, and honestly, I can be truthful. Like, it did not, my divorce, that happened in 2016. 2016. Yeah. 2016 was the start of that. We are now in 2020. So it was 4 years. I'm giving myself more time.
Oh, it's almost 2021.
Yeah, it's almost 2021.
Let's push it.
But I didn't get healed from that sincerely. Like, that weight didn't fall off of me until February the 8th of 2020. Like, it just, because I was still carrying around that. And I want people to understand, like, my friends, I bled all over top of my friends for months. I could not get myself together. I could not get out of bed. I did not take baths. I was malnourishing. I was so, because my heart was so broken. Like, it was so destroyed. Everything that I had worked for, believed in, trusted God for, was just
everything
all of a sudden,
you believe. Your whole story, your whole storyline.
It keeps happening.
A painful thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because you trust, you put your trust in that individual, and you're like, how could you, the very person that I trusted, and not only, we talked about being aligned, but in addition to that, he was my third husband and I was his third wife. So why would you want to go through this again? Why? Like, it made no sense. But at the end of the day, people will always feel, the external will feel levels of despondency towards the choices that you make. People have to learn how to stand true in their own ground so that they don't get hemmed up in that. Right. And there are so many stories of that happening to women and men, where there is an external force that pulls the people apart. And now we have all of these, places that we can go that will help us to heal from that trauma. But the truth of the matter is that if we go ahead and be true with ourselves and get ourselves together, then we might be able to cut some of these numbers down a bit, because divorce is still skyrocketing. Well above 55% of marriages end in divorce, let alone second and
first
third
marriages. I was just going to say, of first marriages, and second and third, it goes higher.
80%, 75%. Like, it is not easy. And nowadays, Melissa, the truth of the matter is that marriage has taken on such a different format now.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
very true.
It is not even sacred. Do you remember back in the day when I'm back in the day. I don't know if you back in the day, but do you remember that we used to call marriage an institution?
Yes. Yes.
What is an institution?
It is a solid, unbreakable, strong walls. It's a fortress that you cannot penetrate. It very, very much. And and it's not viewed the same way. I mean, there's definitely a very, very different sense. And what I think is important, what I kept thinking about when you were telling the story of your third marriage, that I so relate, LaWanda, to the heartbreak and what you went through to come through that, because it's got to drag yourself through the mud and have that darkness that really makes you appreciate the light more. And one of the things that's really hard, especially when you are asking yourself, like, what did I do? Why me? What's wrong with me? There are two people, those two unity candles from those two different sides. There is another person in the scenario who is going through all the same gobbledygook of their own that you are. And to look at, I look at my experience and knowing how misguided I was in my understanding of myself, in my growing up years, in my marriage, and what I thought that that institution was that I was building and working so hard to preserve.
Mhm.
The other individual also had their own misguidings that they were
Mhm.
struggling with and dealing with. And when there are these two, planets that are revolving on different orbits, they are not going to come together.
Right.
And sometimes it's that point that you get to when you realize, yeah, I take responsibility for myself and for what I've done, and I also recognize that it's not all on me. I own what is, and I also know that I can't blame myself.
Right.
I have to, and sometimes it's really hard to forgive what's going on the other side. It's
Key.
really good and helpful if you can,
Yep.
but if you can't, at least forgive yourself so that you can
Good
move
point.
on and heal more. I mean, that's like, because sometimes, and a big part of, what we're talking about today, I feel like, is getting started, like getting to the point where you can start making those moves to move on. And it's coming to that real awareness, having you come to Jesus
Yep.
and seeing that. And it's got to be, you've got to be willing to look at it, and you've got to love yourself.
Yep.
You can't hate yourself. You can't be mad at yourself. Think that you're broken and think that you're incapable, and then be able to move on in a healthy, positive way.
Absolutely. And I think that is the biggest word that we can leave with our listeners.
Yeah.
And that is the power to forgive. Because forgiveness is not for them. Forgiveness is for you.
For you.
Because when you don't forgive people, you carry, and I carried, people laugh at me because they asked a question, and I have lost some weight. And so, because I went on keto, but I changed my mindset, but that's another
I
story.
know. Hey, I know. And it works.
I was like, hey,
amazing.
lady.
Oh my God. No, I'm not knocking it. I know the truth. And I know that, that when you do, you need to do both. You need to do both so it's sustainable. Otherwise, you just get that result because, it's amazing.
Yeah. So it's bad. But I have lost some weight. But people will ask me, LaWanda, have you lost weight? And I'm like, yeah, about 325 pounds. They're like, wow. Like, yeah, his name was,
Yeah, right. Mr. X. His name was number 3. And
his name was number 3. Yeah, number 3. Yeah, I lost. He was about 325 pounds. I lost number 3. So just as a joking matter. But the truth of the matter is, when I finally got to the place of healing on February the 8th of 2020, it was because I forgave him. That was the only reason why I had. And when I say that it was a release like none of there. It was an undeniable release.
The date.
And I remember that night because I was at a concert that I go to every year, and and I sat in the back on purpose because I was like, God, my heart, like, how do I, oh my God, how do I go on? Like, I can't even imagine this. Like, my heart is just so broken. And I remember sitting there and just listening to the worship music, and, and I just immediately began to just purge, and tears just began to run down my eyes. And it wasn't a moment that I was concerned about who saw me, who knew my ministerial capacity. And it wasn't about that, because it was just such a moment that was designed for me to be free. And I spoke those words out of my mouth. I said, I forgive him. And that was when I had the revelation. He had to do what he had to do. I don't agree with it. It was a terrible move to make. And there were literally real life actionable, because people say karma, but there were real life consequences that he had to deal with that was directly related to his decision to break his wife's heart the way he did, because he had a responsibility for me. Like he's responsible for me. And there are just some things that just are immutable laws. Mm-hmm. And that is an immutable law. Like God is not going to take that back. You are supposed to present this woman spotless, like before me, like you. There are things that he will still go through, still have to manage and work through because of the decision that he chose to make. And I am clear about that. And I think about it like in terms of, had I not been willing to give him grace, because that's what it's all about, right? We want people to extend us grace, but a lot of times it's hard for us to extend grace back unto others. Yeah. So I had to extend grace to him so that I could get to my next level and come from underneath that turmoil. My friends, if they were on this interview, they'd be like, "Whew, she wore us out." I wore my friends out. I mean, I'm in court. I am winning every attack that's coming against us, and I am boohoo crying. Everybody in the courtroom is just like, "You're winning. Why are you crying?" I'm like, because I'm winning a fight against the man that I thought was going to be my forever. This is not easy. Like,
this isn't fun for me. This is
not fun. This is terrible. Yeah. Like, this is horrible. Yeah. This should not be happening. But I cried and cried and cried for years. But it's just the reality that I was willing to be able to forgive him. And that is so important. Forgiveness is not for that person. Forgiveness is for you so that you can move on. Love it.
It's completely, so well tied together. So LaWanda, what are you doing now? Given your experience, and we began our conversation talking about how we are both doing and called to similar things. Tell me about the calling that you are answering, how you're going about it, and how people can find you to learn more.
It would be my pleasure, Melissa. So first of all, again, I say that the things that you go through are not always just for yourself. And if you are willing to take that leap to tell your story in an authentic fashion, that you can find a tribe of individuals that you can help. For me, my tribe is an online community, and it's called Chronicles Post-Divorce Advocacy Group. So now you guys know why Melissa and I have connected and resonated on this level, and why this conversation, even though we're in different locations, vibes the way that it vibes, because our stories are so similar in nature. It was funny because we were in a 5-day summit when I met Melissa. Melissa was our first guest. I am a professional MC, and I MC online, live, and virtual events. That's one of my businesses. It's called youneedamc.com. Shameless plug if you do need an MC.
Hey, go for it. Plug away, ladies.
But I do host live online events. So I was the host for that event. And Melissa was the event's first speaker for the 5 days. And when I tell you, I must have mentioned her name during the course of that summit 15 times while we were going through those days, because her story just gravitated towards me and just was like, aha, someone else is literally working in the same space that I'm building, because there are so many hurting people that we need to be able to impact their story. So regardless of how you connect, make sure that you get connected, because there is someone assigned to your story that will need you to help them to overcome. But my group is called Chronicles Post-Divorce Advocacy Group. And we are on Instagram and Facebook. We're building this amazing community of individuals with encouragement, with coaching, with opportunities to hear stories just like this on our podcast, to share, to grow, and to hear, ways that you can, tips and tools that you can use to overcome the challenges. Like, we have all of these amazing things planned for that group. And that's how you can reach out to me. If you're interested in being a part of the Chronicles Post-Divorce Advocacy Group, we invite you to come. It's just another extension of individuals who have been where you are and going where you're going. And we are doing it by examples. We're doing it by telling the truth and by helping individuals come to a realization that what they go through is not where they have to be, that you are somewhere in your future looking much better than you look right now. And you've got to believe that you are somewhere in the future looking much better than you look right now. And so if I have to say that to anyone to encourage you, is to make sure that you are connected. The death knell to any spirit is loneliness. And so you are not allowed to isolate yourself in this time. Join RAD Women. Come on over to Chronicles. Deal with whatever you have to deal with and be around other individuals that understand your story. Do you know one of the things that I couldn't stand when I was going through my divorce was people who have never been where I was at trying to tell me that they understood.
Right.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
You can't possibly understand. Even my male mentors, my pastors, they will tell me, I understand. No, you don't, because you're a man and you will not ever be able to understand what's going on with me as a woman being divorced 3 times. You can't.
Totally. Totally. You may be trained. Yes, you may be trained professionally. You may have worked with so many people. You may have a God-given gift. And at the same time, you still don't have that full from having the actual experience
That's
of
right.
having walked through that fire.
Mm-hmm.
You can speak to it, but you can't be it.
Yeah.
And
that's why joining these types of groups is important to your healing and your well-being. Because, the military has this thing where, they will never leave, a fallen soldier behind. Well, Melissa and I are doing the same thing, honey. We're not trying to leave a fallen divorcee behind. If you want someone just to create a sense of community around your situation, and I don't want to use the word normalize it because it's not normal. Right. But I will say help you get back to some level of normalcy, then you have to put yourself in a position to take advantage of the resources that are available for you. And that is what my mission and my goal is, to help individuals who have suffered the trauma of multiple divorces. Yes, there are people who have only been divorced once in our tribe, but I really speak to that multiple divorcee because it creates such a stigma. When you really have to tell people that you've been divorced,
it's an amplified stigma. Yeah, because there's enough stigma. Yeah.
Definitely. And so that is the differences between the groups. I am more of a co-ed experience here, and I really speak towards individuals with the multiple divorces to help them to get to a place where they can heal and know that they're not alone. So you can reach us again. That's Facebook and Instagram. It is Chronicles. There is at Chronicles PDA. So that's Post-Divorce Advocacy Group at Chronicles PDA is where you can find us. And we would love for you to connect and be a part of us so that we can continue to help you grow and go to your next level of greatness post-divorce.
Awesome. LaWanda, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The work you are doing is so important. This conversation was wonderful. I know that you, in your truth and the beauty and how you so lovingly shared your story, has definitely touched people today. And I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely.
For being here.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Real RAD Women. Are you in the process of your own reinvention? Visit radnewlife.com to find out more about the resources and support you can receive to help amplify your progress. Find out where you are in your process and exactly what you need to do next to take the steps to move forward, and connect with a community that understands your experience and supports you. Again, visit radnewlife.com. And don't forget to tell your friends about this channel, and don't forget to subscribe.